This video is to introduce the reading pack on skills and private sector demand. And in the past, if we'd been talking about skills, we would probably have called it technical and vocational education and training, and the focus would have been very much on government provision of that, with all the training taking place in government-run institutions. Nowadays we talk about skills development, and we see it very much as a tool for economic growth, and we see it being offered in a variety of places. It may be offered still in technical colleges run by the state, but we also see skills development happening in NGOs, in private sector training providers, and also in the workplace. A lot of it takes place now in the workplace. And this is generally regarded as essential because the demand for vocational education and training or skills development is such that governments alone can no longer provide all that is required. This is also recognised by DFID because in the past it's been DFID's education division that has been responsible for what was then called TVET. Nowadays it's the private sector development division, and that shows the shift that's taking place not just within DFID but in other donors as well, away from seeing TVET or TVET as an education tool or a subsector of education, and seeing it much more as a tool for economic growth and development of private sector. Well, there are probably three main sources of data and information that will inform us on what kind of training we should be putting in place that would be of help to employers. The first source of potential data is labour market information systems, and unfortunately in developing countries these are often either non-existent or very weak and not providing us with reliable data. However, labour market information can come in other forms as well, and it can come directly from institutions, for example through tracer studies or through rapid labour market assessments done by training providers. So big national LMI systems are not the only source now for reliable, up-to-date labour market information, and we need to take account of these local sources as well. Another source of potential data is through the development of sector skills councils. These are generally public-private partnerships between the government and employers, where employers within the same sector come together and develop the occupational standards, the training materials, the curricula for jobs in their sector. Where this works, it can work very well. However, there are challenges in introducing sector skills councils, particularly in developing countries, and they're largely around the willingness of employers to come together in groups with government, and also the sustainability of the funding to keep them going, the organisation, how they're put together, and then keeping them sustainable and keeping them funded. So we've got labour market information systems, we've potentially got sector skills councils, and then thirdly, of course, there are employment services. And in many countries there is a network of employment service offices which people who are unemployed may use to help them to find jobs, or to help those who are in employment, help them to find better jobs. Again, very often rather weak and under-resourced, but they can be a critical and very useful source of labour market data. There are generally two main types of skills that employers need, and the first of these, of course, is technical skills. What you find is that there are imbalances and mismatches within the provision of technical skills. On the one hand, you have high unemployment rates sitting alongside very difficult to fill vacancies or skill shortages. You also have large numbers of unemployed people at the same time as you have employers desperate to find people for jobs and vacancies that they have. Even for people who go on to tertiary education or senior secondary education even, we're finding that we have large numbers of arts and social science graduates, but very small numbers of graduates in the STEM subjects, that's science, technology, engineering and maths. And what employers are really looking for now are high-skilled workers in low-cost locations with STEM disciplines. The second kind of skills that employers are looking for, and this is a message that's coming through very strongly at the moment, are employability skills. And these are skills that everyone needs in any job, regardless of what it is. What we mean by employability skills are not just the basic literacy and numeracy that you might expect, but what employers are really looking for are team workers, leadership skills, skills in negotiation, skills in communication and in problem solving. And in an environment where people are changing job more frequently, where technology is moving very rapidly, then these skills, these employability skills, become even more important. And if you're working in a country which is post-conflict, or which is indeed still in a conflict situation, there may be many people many women in particular, who are now heads of household and the main breadwinner, but who have never before worked in formal sector employment. And so these employability skills are particularly needed by them. However, in many countries, skills alone are not sufficient for a young person or a poor person to be able to get work. The recruitment and training, but particularly recruitment practices in many developing countries rely largely on social networks, on who you know, who you're related to, what group, what ethnic group or religious group you may be from. And for many poor people, they're just not part of a social network. They don't have these informal routes into employment. That's where employment services come in, and these may be national systems, but what we find very effective is where training institutions themselves have an employment service for their graduates and are building up a network of local employers who will be prepared to recruit from them, because they can provide the kind of guarantee of a person's character and of the level of their skills that in the past they have been able to get only through social networking. And it is particularly important that training providers do engage with employers, not just for the usual reasons of trying to find somebody a job or perhaps getting funding for a particular course that they offer. But employers can be used for the governance of institutions. They can be used to help with curriculum and development and the development of training materials. They can get involved in assessment. They can get involved in the upskilling of the teaching staff. They can be involved in careers guidance. There's a whole host of ways in which employers can be brought in to training institutions to improve the quality of the delivery and the life chances of their graduates. And we're finding that involving employers in that range of different ways has a much more long-term sustainable impact than merely using them as providers of jobs and finance. And so for each country where an intervention in skills development may be being planned, it's important to remember to look at and to consider the quality of provision of STEM subjects, that's science, technology, engineering and maths, the availability of reliable labour market information, the provision of employability skills, are these embedded into the curriculum, the availability of employment services, particularly for people from poor communities, and also how you're going to get employers engaged with all of this to ensure that the provision that's made available suits their needs. So We have to remember that perhaps unlike some other subsectors of education, skills development is multifaceted, and it's not just about the delivery of technical skills training in a workshop or classroom, but all of these other host of issues need to be taken into account as well.